You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry. Featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the LovAnaverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I am here with composer, solo artist, and mastermind of the Golden World Archive metal opera series, Mr. William Caine. How's it going, Will?
Hi there. Pretty well, actually.
Awesome,
How
man.
how are you doing?
Great, man. Great. And it's so good to have you on this podcast. As you know, we were just chatting a little bit off camera. We've been in touch for a good while, man. Like, you know, years I've been following your work. So it's so great to get the chance now to sit down and have this chat with you.
Yeah, I was actually low-key expecting this interview when I saw, for example, Pete Rawcliffe, which we both collaborated with, and also Laura Maz. And I was like,
Yes.
this is coming.
Yeah.
I was
It's
low-key.
long overdue, man. Long overdue. I've had you on my mind, and then I thought, how have we not done this yet? So yeah, very happy to be doing this now. I was thinking that as well. So Pete obviously featured in Golden World Archive, Laura Maz, Archie Caine as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got plenty of crossover. And I was checking it earlier, and I saw like Golden World Archive related artists. You're in your Fantasia, and I was like, oh, cool. So yeah, man. Yeah, super keen to get into everything. So, I mean, for anybody that's listening to this that might not be aware of who you are and what you do, would you be able to perhaps give a little bit of an overview of yourself and your projects and such?
Yeah, well, like you said, I am a composer and producer. Well, I'm starting to produce like professionally. And I do a little bit, well, a little bit. I do a lot of metal, especially symphonic metal, but I also starting to tap into other styles. And I am a soundtrack composer. I did soundtrack. I made soundtracks for short films and video games. Still not long productions, but maybe we'll see. We'll see about that.
Yeah,
And yeah,
amazing, man.
I think I mean I have music studies, but like elementary music studies, and everything that I've learned was along the way, along the I don't know how much has been since I left, the classical, the conservatory and stuff like that, and I started to actually, do what I wanted with music. I think it
Mhm.
was like 6 years ago or something like that. And I am proud of the journey I've done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. As you should be, man. So, I mean, yeah, there's so much to get, kind of sink our teeth into. Obviously, you're a wonderful soundtrack composer, like orchestration and that kind of thing is really your forte. I mean, you do that so well, very
Yeah.
cinematic kind of style, right? But as you say, you touch upon obviously a lot of metal and also a variety of styles. You've composed soundtracks for yeah, films, video games. That is so cool. Love to chat with you about that. But perhaps also could you maybe give a little overview to your projects? You obviously have your solo work, you have Golden World
Hmm.
Archive, and then maybe some others that you've been involved in.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna start with my solo work because it's the most recent one that I've been working on. And I've done it's I didn't want to do just one style when I work under my own name. And so I think I've done a little bit of metal. I'm starting to do a little bit of metal with this new small project that I have, like science fiction themed project. But I also have done a lot of orchestral music and modern soundtracks, and most of the time, sometimes it's just they are just pieces that I compose for not for a film or a series or a video game. It's just pieces that I have, and I'm like, I'm gonna release an EP with this songs, or I'm gonna release a single with this piece because I like. And I also have done a lot of, I took part in many contests with pieces because, when you're a composer, probably you will understand this. You have a lot of songs and a lot of pieces that you have stored in your hard drive, and you have never published any of them. And they are there, and you're just like, I like these songs. Why aren't they published? And so I use my solo project to kind of release these kind of songs, because sometimes, for example, I have my other project, Golden World Archive, which is, as you said, symphonic metal rock opera, and I have a lot of songs that haven't made the cut for the albums, and so I recycle the instrumentals, and I use them for songs for my own personal project, and the singles that I released. And yeah, I kind of use my solo project to release all of that, and all of the orchestral music also, and the soundtracks that I made for short films and stuff like that. And then we have Golden War Archive, which is like the prodigal son, to say something, and in which I do more like, because it's a different kind of approach, because in one is just me, so I do whatever I want, and the other one I collaborate with other artists, with especially singers. So what I usually do with this kind of collaborations is I let them write their own melodies. I send them the instrumental, and I go like, see if you are comfortable with the melodies, see if you can come up with some melodies, and then I'll write the lyrics over the tracks you sent me, and then I write the melodies as they sent me, if I like it, them obviously. And because it kind of shows the style, their own style. They are able to put a little bit of their own style in the songs. Maybe not in the lyrics, but maybe in the melodies, or maybe they get to create something that they are comfortable in, especially singing, which is kind of the idea. And I really like to make collaborations. I really enjoy them. They are fun to make, and they are fun to produce, because I'm used to produce my voice. I'm used to mix my voice, but when another instrument or another voice that you are not so used to do, it's a challenge. It's kind of a challenge, and it's a nice one. Especially, I am working on a Golden War Archive song right now, and the chorus is just 6 different voices from 6 different singers at the same time, doing like a choir. And that was hard to produce, like very, very hard to produce, to make them sound compressed and equal and expanded and everything. And it was hard. That song is almost finished, by the way.
That sounds cool. And I
And
suppose even from a technical perspective, like the fact that people have recorded remotely with different microphones in different studios
yeah,
must make it quite a challenge.
that is the thing that I've heard in different projects. When you listen to, for example, a project of other artists that has made collaborations with internationally, but and you can kind of hear the difference of the rooms they've recorded on, and the difference of the mix that the producer had to make them more equal. Because, for example, for the first album, because now I'm revisiting some of the songs of the first album, and I realize the difference between microphones, because in the second album, the recordings are quite a little bit more professional, and they are easier to blend together, to make them sound kind of recorded in the same studio and recorded in the same room and stuff like that. But in the first one, there was like very kind of different microphones and different styles of recording, and that's going to be a hard thing to do when I do the remaster. Spoiler.
Yeah, wow, man.
And then, I've done works for filmmakers and video game makers, and I also done a little bit some collaborations with, for example, the last song from Valkata, the Archangel. I
Yeah,
done
of course.
the orchestration, which was a fun and fast work to do, and I am waiting for more work like that.
Yeah, that was an awesome song, man. The Archangel
Yeah.
Valkata song, and obviously Pete singing on that one. So you had that familiar territory. That I mean, there was a lot of amazing people on that, and I think was it mixed by Joost van der Burg as well, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it
all-star
was.
cast.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. And so would you say that like soundtrack composing in terms of like video games, film, etc., is that kind of like would you see that as kind of like your job, your career kind of thing? Or I suppose as a part of it.
I like to do both things. I like to do like producing, like for and making metal music, and I like to make orchestrations for this kind of, because it is a different approach. It is
Mhm.
I like the blend of like a hard thing and the guitars, and the heavy guitars and the bass and the drums, and the aggression of that kind of sound, and then the sound that you can add to it, and how you can expand that sound, how you can amplify that sound by adding a classic orchestra, which is a full acoustic sound.
Mhm.
It is very interesting. But when it comes to soundtrack composing, it is a different kind of approach, because you have not freedom to do whatever you want, because you are
Mhm.
working for someone usually, but you are the one who knows how things are done.
Mhm.
You're not usually working with other musicians. You're
Mhm.
working with people who usually don't know a lot about music. So you
Mhm.
have the freedom to convince them of things. Sometimes things work better because you understand better music than they
Mhm.
do. They, of course, understand better, for example, filmmaking and scenes and
Mhm.
all about that. And it is like a negotiation, the work
Yeah.
of making, yes, because you're like, oh, okay, I've done this, and you send it to them, and they're like, we don't like it. Can you change this? And you change it, and then they say, I don't like it either. Can you change this and that? And like, can
Yeah.
you try this and can you try that? And then you're like, okay, look at. I made this because for example, it just blends with the footsteps, the sound of the footsteps of the character, or with the transitions perfectly, and they can be convinced about that, because
Yeah.
that's about it. It's about storytelling.
Mhm.
It's different from making a song, because when you make a song, you have like sort of like a structure which you can follow. That you have the chorus, and you can repeat the structure in the choruses. But when you make, for example, especially for short films, which are it's a very a very sped up kind of
Mhm.
narration, and when you have that, you need to change themes quickly. So
Mhm.
the sound is gonna change all the time, and that is the fun of it, actually.
Mhm.
And you can convince them because you're storytelling. Both of you are storytelling, the filmmaker and you. And the thing about soundtrack music is that it must push forward the storytelling, and accentuate emotions and scenes and stuff like that. So you can actually negotiate with a filmmaker about,
Mhm.
this suits better your tone, and they can be like, oh, okay, I didn't see it like that. Now I see it, and I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and stuff like that.
I think
And
that's a
it's
great
quite,
insight. Yeah, you're almost
it's
having to kind of sell the filmmaker a bit, like present your ideas.
yeah.
Yeah, because I suppose that's an interesting thing. Because as you say, often if you're working, okay, collaborations like Valcata, let's say,
Hmm,
you're talking to other musicians about music, about making a song, and it's
hmm.
really just about the song. Whereas it's a very different challenge, isn't it? When I suppose a filmmaker normally is not a musician and is thinking more about like a feeling that they want, as you say, a story that
Yeah,
they're trying to tell. So
yes.
you have to be like, here's the music, here's why I feel it fits your story. So it's a interesting, unique challenge by the sound of it. It's cool to get your insight on that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you say this, because the filmmakers describe the music they need,
Hmm.
not by the music or the instruments or the
Yeah.
sound they want
Yeah,
to
that's
hear,
your
but
job.
the feeling they want to
Yeah.
experience when they
Hmm.
listen to that. They were like, oh, here we need a more like ominous music, like a more tense music and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And you're like, how can I get a tense music? How can I get
Yes.
a tense sound? And then you work on the things you know that it makes tension. It makes tension in
Yeah.
the music, and you work with that and you present them to that. And if they don't like it, you know that there's other options, and you present them to them,
Mhm.
and until you get what they are more comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you watch a movie sometimes with subtitles, you will get those musical cues like
Yeah.
ominous like violin or something, or tone. As you say, often not even instruments, but yeah, it's funny. I'm curious then, like, would you, from your experience, be able to kind of give us an insight as to the process of, let's say somebody made a short film and they've sent this to
Hmm.
you and they're like, give me some music, and I guess they've got some cues of what kind of music they want when, but you've got a blank slate. Like, how do you work out like what the tempos are going to be, what the theme? How do you start to approach composing that?
Well, usually if they work well, if the filmmakers work well, for example, I think that the best soundtrack I've made is Lágrimas de Dragón, which is a short film. I think I have it published on Spotify.
Yeah, I
It's
love
a
that
short
piece. Yeah.
film. It's a short film that I made for. It's a soundtrack that I made for a Spanish short film, which received a lot of prizes. And um, I think that's the best soundtrack I've ever made, because they work so well with me. The first time we started to talk about the soundtrack, I sat with them and we talked about the short film. They showed it to me. They had like sort of like short pieces of music taken from other soundtracks over the mix, and they were like, we need something like this, and this is happening here, and this is happening there, and this is the story that we are telling in each scene. And I was like, okay, I am already, when they were explaining to me, I was already having ideas about and how to make them. I was like, oh, this can sound here, this is fitting here.
Mhm.
And then I received the short film, without the audio, the image.
Mhm.
And then you start to see how long the scenes are. and how long you are gonna feel an emotion in that scene. For example, that short film at the beginning has like a playful fight between two kids,
Hmm.
and I had to, get and I had to come up with the metric of that fragment, and I was like, okay. And this is about trying stuff. And I usually start with like a tempo, and I see how the compasses fit the scene,
Hmm.
and then I'm like, oh, maybe I need a little bit more. And then you start with 70 BPMs, but you need a little bit more, and you start 72 BPMs, but you need a little bit more, and you're 73 BPMs, and you need a little bit more, and you're at 73.5 BPMs, and you end up with tempos like this. And but this is the thing about and maybe that tempo is going to change the next scene. The next
Yeah.
15 seconds is going to be a completely different tempo, and the secret is to be able to transition from
Mm.
from one to the other, and so that they don't feel like forced.
Hmm.
And that was quite interesting to do. Quite usually, if filmmakers do something well, if they already have a metric in their minds, they already in. Sometimes it's something subconscious. They don't do it consciously,
Mm.
and they create a rhythm between scenes,
Yes.
between changes of scenes, and that is quite easy to follow. And sometimes they adapt to the music you create. That is the
Mm.
other the other the other the other face of the coin. You can, as a composer, if I don't know how to say it, you can. You already receive the film done, and you adapt to it, and it can happen the other way around. You make
Mm.
them, they give you like a sketch, and you make the music, and they are like, okay, we're gonna fit this more to the music. We're gonna shorten this a little bit so it fits perfectly the music, and stuff like that.
Mm.
And it is a process between two parts, actually, the
Mm.
creation of music, which is, for example, for short films, I think the music is one of the most important things of the short film. Is the storytelling, of course, and the music, because for films and series and stuff like that, yes, it's important, because without music it would be a little bit empty of
Mhm.
emotions, especially. But for short films, it's essential,
Mm.
because it keeps the attention of the person that is watching the short film, especially if it doesn't have dialogues.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, of course. It's fascinating because, as you say, it's so integral to the storytelling. The music
Mm.
is is storytelling just as much as anything else that's happening in the film, right? So, um, I guess as you say, like in a feature length movie, you might be able to have it more spread out, longer ambiences or
Mm.
whatever, whilst other things carry the narrative. Whereas I suppose if it's a short film, the whole thing almost plays out like a song, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, that's really cool to hear. And it's interesting hearing you talk about composing for film and the unique thing of like, yeah, you can have this sequence that's spread out and it's going to play off this scene, which is like 15 seconds. And then you need to transition into this thing where it might drastically change, right?
yeah,
Um, and that is the storytelling component. And I think that that's a really cool crossover when you think about like progressive rock and things like that, and
yeah,
then how that then moves into like rock and metal opera and that side of musical storytelling that you're obviously hugely passionate about. So
yeah.
it kind of seems like musical storytelling for you is perhaps the biggest passion. Is that a fair distinction?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say, because usually, even when I make songs, the songs that I make myself, I try to do it like a story, because there are songwriters that are very good at expressing emotions through lyrics. I am not. Let's just say it. I am not. And but what I think I do best is tell a story.
Hmm.
Tell a conversation between two characters. I think that is the best thing I do, because I think that two of the best lyrics that I've written are from the song "A Cold Heart,"
Mm.
featuring Pete Rawcliffe and Marina Rey, which is a conversation between two characters,
Hmm.
and also "The Queen of Thorns," which
Hmm.
is which features Laura Maz and Marina Rey again. And it's also a conversation between two characters. And
Hmm.
I, by the way, I've done a remaster of that song and a remixed and remake, sort of like a remake of the of that song, and I'm gonna publish with the next Golden World Archive single. And
Amazing.
I think it's gonna sound way better, and it's gonna be much well received than the first time it was out. And it kind of really illustrates the contrast, between two characters, because sometimes it's that thing in the Queen of Thorns. It's a conversation between two characters. Well, much more like an argument with
Hmm.
between two characters. One of them is angry and spiteful of the other one, and the other one is pleading to the first one.
Hmm.
But in A Cold Heart is two characters, one sort of like trying to convince the other of something, and the other quite of like sad about something. So it's more like um like a slow feeling,
Hmm.
like slow emotions, like not that aggressive or not
Hmm.
that contrasted.
Hmm.
So
No, I'm
it's
with
yeah,
you.
it's kind of a storytelling. And I think that the best song that I've made storytelling wise is Nightfall, which is the
Mhm.
longest song from
Of
the
course.
from the first album, which is like it's very progressive because it goes through different themes and different parts. And I think that violin solo that song has is the best violin solo I've ever composed, which
Hmm.
it was with my friend Emma, and she came to my house, and we kind of composed it here. And while we were recording, I was like, let's just hit record and let's just play things and go and try to come up, because it was like an ad libitum kind of thing, because I had like 45 seconds and I was like, I have 45 seconds, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Like it has to be emotional, it has to be sad, it has to be expansive, it has to get to the heart of people, because it's a character dying, so it has to be that. But
Mhm.
from that you can do whatever you want, and we started to play with themes I had in that same song before, and we came up with that solo, and I'm very proud of that. I think that's the best storytelling piece that song has.
Mm. Yeah, I love that you say that because again, it both of those things you've highlighted there are the storytelling elements that you can get from the singers and the
Mm,
lyrics, which is more, I suppose, of a direct narrative, whereas you're also talking about the musical, storytelling, how that violin solo expresses the
mm,
intensity of that scene. So I love that demonstration there. What you were saying about I like this thing that you present about the conversations, because to have this kind of background of where two characters are coming from and the feelings that they have, and then therefore how the tension in that scene plays out.
mm,
You're right. That's an excellent um, you know, uh, foundation, I suppose, for a piece of music, especially telling a story. So that is all like so cool. I'd be really interested if we kind of like stripped it back to its foundation. We kind of did this a bit with film, which was great, but what how would you describe the process for creating a metal opera, I suppose, specifically Golden World Archive? You've mentioned a few things about I'm especially interested that you get the singers to kind of contribute their own melodies and things. I think that's wonderful because it brings more of their personality in. But then I think it's so interesting that you still have to manage that in a way that tells the story effectively and all that. So I'd love to get just an insight to your process.
Well, so I usually have the idea for the album first. Of course, the Golden War Archive. It's a whole universe, like kind of epic fantasy universe. In fact, I am writing a novel about it.
Oh,
I don't know when it's going to be released because it's like a side project, and I'm working
yeah.
on it bit by bit. But I come up with the story of the album and how many songs am I gonna need for that story? Because
Mhm.
I usually, I start to have like 16 songs or 20 songs, and I'm like, no, 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 no. This cannot be done. I have to be a little bit more specific. I need to just pick the right parts of the story. I need to have the because I have the story already in my mind. I know what is happening. I know how they get to things and what things happen in between. But not all of them are not all of them can be done in music, especially
Mhm.
in an album. Because if it was a musical kind of things, like Broadway musical, it could be done, but
Mhm.
it is not. It is a conceptual album, and I need to be specific about the things I want to tell. So I took
Mhm.
the bits of the story that fit together, but and still tell the story, but transmit the different parts of the story without being like filling,
Mhm.
like film for film, because I have a lot of instrumentals made, but I only used two. For the first album, I think I added an introduction, an interlude, and an outro, and yeah, that was kind of the feeling of the songs that could be taken out of the album, and the album would still be the same.
Mhm.
But for the second one, I was like, I'm gonna get rid of all of this, and I'm gonna just start with the story. I'm gonna tell the story, and it's gonna be like a smallest story, maybe 10, 12 songs,
Mhm.
and I start with that, and then I get, so I have these things, and I have to fit this the different emotions and the different parts of the story that I want to tell with music. So for example, it's quite, you know about this. It's kind of like, we know we have to tell something about, or a moment of love, or like just melancholy or something like that. You go with a ballad.
Mhm.
This then I do this kind of process. I say, for this I need a ballad, for this I need a faster song, for this I need a more aggressive song, for this I need a more contrasted song. This I want, and there is always one big song.
Mhm.
The symphonic metal albums also always have one big song, like
Yeah.
7, 8 minutes long song. And I always like to do this because I like to do big instrumentals. I like to compose big
Mhm.
and progressive instrumentals. I really enjoy doing that. And so I am like, so what is the song that I need for all the characters to sound, or all the singers to sing at the same time? And I'm like,
Mhm.
this one. So this is gonna be the big song. I go like that, and then I start to make instrumentals like a sketch. Like I make one, I make another one, I make another one, and then I fit them in the different parts that I selected. For example,
Mhm.
this one fits better. It fits really good in this kind of thing. So if I need, for example, to make some changes storytelling wise in the instrumental, not in the lyrics yet, but in the instrumental. So for example, I'm gonna put an example. In the second album we are releasing, the beginning of the story. It's a girl in the desert, and she sees a meteor fall. into the desert. So
Nice.
I made the instrumental for that song, and then I changed it after that because I kind of wanted to be a little bit more heavy song, and I also wanted to emphasize the moment in which the meteor falls down to the ground, you know.
Hmm.
So I added like sound effects and like a breakdown and something like that, you know,
Hmm.
and to push the storytelling a little bit more in the face of the listener.
Hmm.
And so the listener can, you know, like be like, oh, so I am actually listen to like an audiobook,
Yes. Yeah.
like musical audiobooks sort of thing, you know.
Hmm.
And then after that, I reach out to the singers. I'm like, you're gonna sing this song, and this song. You can come up with melodies, and if you want, and if you don't, maybe I. And sometimes I try to make the melodies myself because sometimes I'm like, this is the melody that I want for this song. You
Hmm.
know, that's it. And then I sent it to the musician. I'm like, this is what you're gonna sing. But sometimes I'm a little bit stuck, and I'm like, I don't know how to properly mirror this, how to properly transmit this thing that I want to talk about. So I have a little chat with the singers, and I'm like, I want to tell this. This is what I want to tell. This is what your character is going through. And I want you to come up with a melody that is comfortable to you over this instrumental. And then I
Hmm.
do changes in the instrumental if I need to. And that's when and after that I write the lyrics. Or if the sometimes the singers, when they record the improvisations of the melodies, they sometimes record short phrases, and sometimes I use those phrases to for the lyrics. And after that, when the song is completed, it's recorded and produced, and sometimes it goes through changes in the production because
Hmm.
you always made some changes in the special in the instrumental composition wise, and that's all about it actually. And then
No.
there are
That's
many
nice.
instrumentals that I don't that I have stored that I haven't used yet, that I they are there.
Hmm. Yeah, I get that. And then maybe that could be used for a future Golden World archive, or as you said earlier, perhaps that gets use in just your William Kahn solo work because it can still be just as good work, but it's doesn't necessarily fit the exact story you want to tell, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes they can be used like as an ideas, you know, like maybe not use
Mm.
the whole instrumental, but like, oh, I liked this idea that I made in this
Hmm.
specific song, so I'm gonna, you know, like copy paste the project, open it, and do all the changes that I need to do to create a completely new song with that part that I liked.
Mm. Yeah, so that's fantastic. I think you've demonstrated that really, really well. I love that insight to your process, and it sounds really well put together. I especially love how you're able to incorporate the singers so collaboratively, because I think what's definitely more typical is a composer will write every single note and want everything to the
Yeah.
dot. Because I mean, I guess it's a more normal way to work. It's more you have a lot more moving pieces if you're getting a lot of people working collaboratively. So I'm really impressed at how you managed to do that. I'm kind of curious, like I can see how you have basically written a story. You've kind of penciled it all out, and then you're kind of making a film soundtrack for this story that you kind of
Mhm.
have ironed out with your instrumentals, and then you're taking a scene, let's say like one of those conversations, like a cold heart,
Hmm.
and so you know what part of the story it is, and you've made the music to tell that story. And then you're going to those two singers and saying, here's where your character's at. This is what they're feeling. This is what they're trying to say. Here's the song. And then you just kind of let them go at it. And so you'd give it to two singers who are having a conversation, and what they just record whatever words come to their mind or just random sounds or what. And like what do you tend to get from something like that
I
round
mean,
of the
for example,
process?
for the first album, I wrote all the lyrics, and I think that was kind of the moment I realized that, you know, not the moment I realized, but the moment I was like, okay, people have different voices. It's not like a clarinet that almost every clarinet sounds almost the same. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it can change depending on who's playing and depending on the brand of the instrument, but usually it has kind of the same texture, the same sound.
Mm-hmm.
But voices, no, voices are completely different. Each one
Yeah.
is like a world. So who knows better a voice than the people that has that voice? And
Yeah.
so I kind of in the second album I kind of did that because I wanted to know if they were comfortable in that key that I had for that song, and if they could manage to do some things, because in the first album I wrote a lots of melodies based on what I thought they could do. Like
Mm-hmm.
I asked them a little bit about the register and stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
not that much actually. So it was kind of like a thing I realized that it could work better if I give the singers, like a small freedom to be able to create something they were more comfortable in
Mm-hmm.
and comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind
And
of the thing, and I give the instrumentals to them, and they like it. So you improvise over it. I will always tell them, you don't need to get out the microphone. You just hit record with your phone
yeah.
and send it to me. I want something quick,
Mm-hmm.
something that I can hear anytime, anywhere. I don't need for you to make an appointment with your recording studio to record that. No, 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 no. I want
Yeah.
an improvisation, and do it whenever you can and however you can. I just want to hear it. And I just want
Mm.
to listen to it. I just want to come up with to see if I can, take melodies out. For example, in the next song we are going to release from Golden Wall Archive, I asked Laura to do this kind of improvisation, and I didn't use all of the melodies she came up with, but there was a melody that I used for that she came up with, that I used for the instrumental, that I added to the
Right.
instrumental after.
Mm-hmm.
And it, instead of a voice, it's a piano, but you can get out ideas from other people,
Yeah.
and it is kind of interesting to do this kind of thing, because like, oh, maybe this doesn't fit for the vocals, but maybe this can fit for the arrangement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's quite an interesting thing to do.
I think that that's fascinating because it kind of made me hark back to what you were saying about film composing. It's slightly different, but it's still that premise that these two sides of the coin, how they can influence each other. So
Hmm.
just how your music that you might compose for a film might affect the way that they then edited it. The melodies that Laura or anybody has come up with has made you go back to the instrumental and be like, actually, yeah, I like that. I'm going to adapt it. So it's not as simple as here's the instrumental that I made, sing over it. It's much more of a kind of
Yeah,
tied in process in that way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the hardest thing for me is write the lyrics. So sometimes I'm just like,
Mm.
and if you can come up with some lyrics for
Right.
this,
Cool.
for
Mm.
your character, if you can come up with some phrases, it would be helpful. Because sometimes I find it hard to, it is not hard for me to create an instrumental. I can do it like that. But
Mm.
to create the vocal melodies and the lyrics, and have some good lyrics, lyrics that are a little, that are because storytelling is easy. You
Mm.
can come up with, I can come up with um I don't know, like a tale. I can come up with a tale very fast.
Mm-hmm.
But having to put that story to to poetry, because lyrics are actually poetry, to
Mm.
poetry, it's hard, it's very
Yeah.
hard, and I find it sometimes I'm like stuck with it. I'm stuck in front of my notebook, like trying to write the lyrics, and sometimes hitting my head against the table. I'm like,
Yeah.
why can't I come up with anything? And it's a little bit frustrating in that way, but that's why I also do this kind of process with I kind of also started to do this process with the singers.
Mm. I mean, it is quite a challenge, isn't it? Because not only are you adapting a story into poetry, but you also have very specific requirements to that poetry. You need it to match the syllables and the rhythm and the melody of the
Hmm.
music and everything. So it is quite a challenge. But I love that premise of giving somebody the character and the scene and the premise and say, here's what you're feeling, and allowing for them to kind of, in a way, much more organically act it out. There's something so cool about that because, yeah, I feel like there's a real authenticity to the performance that way, and the singer really gets to kind of express themselves as this character, which, yeah, I think is such a wonderful thing to pull off.
Yeah, and I think that is a thing, a good thing, because usually when you reach out to a singer, they are like, okay, so this is gonna cost you this, and I'm doing this. I have these days to record and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you involve them in the process, they are like,
Mm.
oh, so and they can get into, they can kind of they are when you say this to them and when you send them the instrumental and you go like, okay, I want you to record this and I want you to do like improvisation so I can see that, and they're like, oh, so the theme is this, also what is going on in the song, and they kind of get a little bit more involved, and the
Mm.
result of those lyrics and those recordings that are come up that are going to come out of that of that whole process are gonna be
Mm.
better than if you just send them
Yeah.
the lyrics and this is this is that, and you have to record this, and it's a different way of getting the people that you're collaborating with involved in what you do.
Yeah, I agree, but I love how you managed to embrace that because it's just that thing that it invites almost more chaos to the situation because of it's more collaborative and more creative, but you have to be kind of willing to let go of that need to control, and be like, no, it needs to be like this and that. And so to be able to put that much work into creating your masterpiece, but then have be relaxed enough and have the freedom to be like, no, here's all of this space for you to come and give your parts to it. I think that I love that as like an approach. It's something that I've tried to adopt myself, but it is a unique challenge in its own right. And I love that you embrace that.
I mean, I think that the idea is to know what you are best at and to know what you are not best at, and
Yeah.
to kind of try to cover that, what is not your forte, and try to
Mm,
cover up that with other people, instead
mhm.
of I'm gonna do it everything myself because I can
Yeah.
do it everything myself, and maybe you're not good at some stuff, Ben, because we cannot be good at everything.
Of
That's a
course.
reality.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you could be very good at composing instrumentals and storytelling through music, but when it comes, for example, in my case, when it comes to lyrics, I'm not very good. And so that's kind of the thing that, oh, and sometimes to compose vocal melodies, that I'm not very good either. And for my voice, yes, because I know my voice perfectly well. I know what I can do, I know what I cannot do, and I am more comfortable in doing the melodies I come up with.
Mm,
But for other singers, that's where the thing changes. And I think that's the idea, is to know what you are not that good at, and trying to have more people involved in that specific area.
mhm,
And so the result is gonna be definitely better than that.
mm. Yeah, I agree. And it made me think of something that I'd love to get your opinion on because I feel like the realm of a composer, especially composers probably most prevalent in like film and soundtrack kind of world in this day and age. Obviously, somewhat classical too, but
Hmm.
especially in the soundtrack world, I do feel like there's almost some different rules that you play by compared to normal, you know, music artists. Um, and one thing that this made me think of is, especially someone that comes to mind is like Hans Zimmer, right? So Hans
Hmm.
Zimmer is probably like the most famous or prolific soundtrack composer right now, probably.
Hmm.
Um, and so he's credited all over the place. And he's kind of seen as the big maestro guy. But I'm pretty sure, like, when you often see his process, he is really, in a way, outsourcing a lot to a lot of different musicians. So he would be getting some amazing violinist or whoever to actually really contribute significantly to that violin part. And so, in a way, he's the composer of the overall thing, but he's kind of using lots and lots of people to kind of compose pockets of it, and yet he's considered the composer. But what do you think about that? Because I feel like you probably have a lot more insight to that world in general.
The fun thing is I've done master classes from Hans Zimmer, and
Right,
I think that my masters in soundtrack composition are Hans Zimmer and John Williams, which I think they
right,
are both different kind of music schools,
definitely,
composition
yeah,
schools, very differently. But when it comes to it's a scary challenge when it comes
yeah,
to to gather, especially because when I make music, I usually make music by myself. I use
mhm,
VSTs, and I think I've mastered the VSTs to a point that I can create music that is convincing, that
yeah,
that orchestrations that are convincing and they sound real. But when it comes to record with an orchestra and
mm,
gather that amount of instruments, because Hans Zimmer is a little bit crazy. I
yeah,
think he's a little bit mad when he I don't know, because I remember there is a company that creates VSTs. I think you've heard of, is Spitfire Audio, which is from the
yeah,
UK,
sure,
and they've done a library, a strings library with Hans Zimmer. And that
mm,
library, when you see how many instruments they used for recording, they use like
yeah,
more instruments, more string instruments, like violins, violas, cellos, and basses. They use more strings instruments than an orchestra has of the total of instruments. I think that there
yes,
was 120 and 20 just
yeah,
strings
ridiculous.
players, and I was like, Jesus Christ. um,
Yes, and you turn
and I
all the
remember
microphones on the plug-in, and your computer just shuts down.
And
Yeah,
I remember hearing, and in one of the master classes I took, I remember Hans Zimmer talking about, I had like 60 cellos for doing these things, and I had to make them fit in a room, and I was like, 60 cellos? Are you crazy? Like,
yeah,
who gets 60 cellos? An orchestra
yeah,
has 60 musicians,
yeah, yeah.
and to manage that amount of people and of instruments, and then because it's just my head hurts just to think about it. But
Yeah,
the process of like having to not just to compose for that, because you can compose, you want to create. I believe that his idea to have 60 cellists is to have like a very more wide
yeah.
like cello ensemble sound. But when you think about the whole administrative process,
Oh
having
man.
to call all of them, because you don't have an orchestra that has
Yeah.
60 cellos, you have
No,
to
only
pick
Hans
them.
Zimmer can do that, basically.
You have to
Yeah,
pick them from different things. You have to
yeah,
mix the cellos that from different orchestras. Like, I'm gonna
yeah,
take the cellos from this, and from that,
yeah,
and then having to create like a room to record all those 60 cellos, just cellos, and
yeah,
then put all the microphones to create the white sound, to plug them into the mixing table, to record all of the tracks, and then mix all of those tracks. That produces me headache.
100%, man. Yeah, it's crazy. Obviously, I guess that's his forte, isn't it? Hans Zimmer, and he gets
Yeah.
known by that, and that's why yeah, he works on those movies where they allow him to do that, but only he can really get away with it. But what I've noticed is that Hans Zimmer often is credited on films or soundtracks, or whatever, with somebody else. And so he seems to work a lot in a way where
Yeah.
somebody else will actually do a lot of the legwork, and he's almost like mentoring it or kind of contributing
Mm.
parts to it. I think it's, yeah, I just think it's interesting like that. I feel like composers can often work in a way where, yeah, they're kind of overseeing things, but really there are so many people contributing to the music, not just in terms of playing lines, but actually kind of creating, composing the parts. I mean, you said this about composing this violin solo with your friend. Um, and so ultimately this is your composition and you brought this
Mm.
person in. But I suppose if they have also they're kind of contributing creatively to writing the part, right? Under
Yeah.
your overarching composition. So how
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that differs as a kind of composer to maybe the typical kind of band setup?
That's the thing. It's because I think that every band has a working process. I actually
Mm,
don't know, and I think that the only bands that I've heard a little bit about their process is Epica,
okay.
which
Yeah,
I think
cool.
they do like a lot of work together. I feel when I listen to their music that they do a lot of work together,
Mm,
and because I know it's Mark Jansen who writes all the lyrics, but you also have the keyboardist. I don't know all their names. I know some of them, and I don't know all their names, or I am afraid that I mispronounce or that I mix their
yes,
names.
the Dutch name.
I
So
think it's Cohen. Is Cohen the keyboardist, and he does a lot of the orchestration. Before the producer come in and do the proper orchestration or records with the orchestra and stuff like that. And I know that they, for example, they get together in a house, and they rent a house and they start the process, and they spend several weeks working on the process together. But
mm,
sometimes I feel like the other bands, for example, I feel like, for example, Nightwish, it's all about Thomas. It's all
yeah.
about him. I feel like he does everything. He even does the production. And he writes the lyrics. He composes the orchestration. I feel like he does almost everything. And I think that that's the thing. There are different bands that do different things, and there's not one right process. But I feel like the process of composing together, it's a more rewarding experience, not in the result that is going to come up with, because for example, one member of a band, they're going to be like, oh, I would have done this song differently, but that's the thing. That's Everyone is going to be happy about different songs, and the whole the just the experience of working with other people, and just um, arguing about the song, and talking about this could be this, try this and try that, or this could work like this, or someone giving you an idea of like, you could add this to the thing. And I think that that's a more intelligent way of creating something, when you collaborate with when you have a band, or when you collaborate with another person and stuff like that. I think that's a more intelligent and rewarding experience.
Yeah. And I suppose that's why, the best bands in a way are able to have that real sense of chemistry, and because you've got to have trust and vulnerability and stuff to be able to do that, right? And kind of take the ego and stuff out of it. So
Yeah.
when a band is able to do that really well, like perhaps Epica, um, then it comes together really nicely. And I mean, let's face it, it shows because Epica's music is just incredible, and the band have had
Mhm.
such amazing longevity and just go from strength to strength. So yeah, phenomenal, man. I want to do switch the pace a little bit, because oh god, I could talk to you about all of this stuff all day, man, and go down all sorts of rabbit holes. But um just to get a bit more context, I wanted to take it back to the beginning and get an idea of when you actually first got into music and composing and your musical journey, like overall throughout life.
Well, I think I've absorbed the in my family we are all creative people in different kind of
Right.
areas, like writing or painting or music or stuff like that. And I've always been interested in music, and my parents always, they always listen to the classics, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, and this kind of, the music in Queen, AC/DC. So I kind of got
Nice.
into the heaviest stuff from very early. And I always had an affinity to classical music too, and to, orchestral music. And when I was, I believe, 10 years old, I started to play clarinet.
Mm.
And I've moved from band to band and from school to school. And I did, the elementary 4 years of conservatory, of music conservatory. And but I was not happy with that. I didn't like the classical way of teaching things, and I have many things against it, which is it's a personal thing that I have.
I get it.
Um, and I didn't like the traditional way of teaching classical music and teaching music in general. So I was like, no, I'm not having this, and I don't want it. And then I quit it, and I still was in a band, in an orchestral band at that time, and playing the clarinet because I played the trumpet for like 2 or 3 years, and I was not having it either. I didn't like it, and not a bit. And then I quit the clarinet. I was like, no, this is it. This is it. I'm done with this shit. I don't want to do it anymore. But I was like, I like music. I like music a lot. And in my last years playing the clarinet and playing in the orchestral band, I was like, I really like music, and I really like to. I would love to create music. So when I quit the clarinet, I started to kind of compose, and this is about 6, 7 years ago. I don't recall exactly. Um, yeah, probably 7 years ago. And I started to kind of compose, with composition software, like with
Mm.
music sheet software. And I started to do that, and then I got into the more DAW, this kind of stuff, and VSTs and that, and I was like, this is promising. This has a lot of things that I can get. And then I started the project, the Golden Wood Archive project, which was not called Golden Wood Archive by that time. It went through different names, through different name changes, until I came up with Golden World Archive, which I don't know if it's a good choice, because it's kind of a little bit hard to pronounce for people that are not English speakers. And but that's it.
Well,
It's
it
going
does
to
the
be like
job.
that, and
Yeah.
it's gonna. And then I started to work on that like 5 years ago, because the first album was released 3 years ago, but the whole process started a long ago.
Mhm.
And then I got it. I think it's interesting to talk about why I got into the whole conceptual album thing and the whole rock
Yeah.
opera thing, because it was a time when that I discovered the album The Source from Ayreon. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this album is great," because I at the time, as I was very into into Epica and Nightwish and stuff like that. So when I saw
Mm.
that it was both of the singers, Flo Jansen and Simone Simons, were in that album, I was like, I'm gonna listen to this. And when I
Yeah.
listened to that, when I listened to that, I was like, oh, I really like this. I really like this idea of creating like a story, because I knew they were stories like that. There were stories like that. For example, The Wall
Of
from Pink
course, rock
Floyd by
opera.
Pink
Yeah.
Floyd, or Tommy.
Mm. Yeah, the
And
big one.
yeah, and I, but I really got into the idea into this thing, because I was like, okay, so he's telling like a science fiction story in
Yeah.
a very, very intelligent way. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen more of that. And I got into, the album that has a binary code in the
Yeah,
title, which I
zero
don't
one
recall
zero
exactly.
zero one one, something like that. Yeah.
Which is, I know that it's the code translates to the letter Y,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
the name of the planet that he creates and stuff like that. And I remember listening to the first song of the Source, which
Yeah.
has a part. I don't recall the name of the singer. It's a very famous progressive metal singer.
Mm.
The one that sings all the stuff in binary code. Do
Yeah, yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. He does like all of the backing vocals on the robot
Yeah,
voices and stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I really love that. I was like,
It's like
oh,
crazy harmony. It's like Queen-esque, but like on steroids.
yeah. And I was like, I really like this. I really like how many things you can do storytelling wise in music, in just not like opera, but and not like musical or soundtrack, but just in music. You can
Yeah,
just play one song because you like one song and because you like the melodies of that song, or sometimes even though it's a storytelling and it has a story behind and characters and stuff, they are singing about an emotional theme or something like that. You can listen to that, and you can take it out of the story and listen just
yeah.
what that one
It can still
song.
be just a
And
great
I was
song.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, and I was like, I really like this. I want to do things like that, and that's how Golden Wood Archive started.
nice.
And but I also like to do like kind of soundtracks and orchestral music, and that's how I started. And I started in classical music, and so that kind of left a footprint in my
Yes.
in my whole journey through music, and that's how I got here today.
Yeah, no, oh, that's so awesome, man. And I suppose that must have been around about the time the Source came out, because I suppose I think the Source was about 2017 or something like that. So it must have
2016,
been,
I think. Yeah.
was it? Okay. So it must have been probably the most recent Ayreon album at the time. And it's interesting because as well, you collaborated with Oha and Valkata on Archangel. And I remember I actually
Mm.
had Oha on this podcast as well a while ago, and he specifically said it was the Source by Ayreon as well that was like massive influence and made him start Valkata. And the first Valkata album is like very, very reminiscent of the Source,
Yeah.
like them leaving to find this other world and the president and things like that. So yeah, that's really cool that you have that crossover and have come together to collaborate too. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
wicked
yeah,
record.
because I believe it was an album who left a mark, because I think that after that album came out, there was a lot of science fiction metal
Yeah,
opera projects come out at the
yeah, yeah.
same at the same time, and I was like, wow, this really left a mark, because I've listened to some other projects like that, which are very good too.
Yeah.
But I think the source is literally the source of all of that.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, my project is more like fantasy inspired,
Mm.
but it has elements from science fiction. But I
Hmm.
think I'm forgetting about one of the artists that really influenced me of doing especially this second album that I'm working on, which is Dark Sarah. You know,
Mm.
the project from Heidi Parvainen, I think she's called,
Hmm.
and which I think it's a fantastic project. And their third album is like the best album they have, and I think it's a masterpiece storytelling wise. It's
Mm.
really a masterpiece. If you haven't heard it, you must,
Hmm.
because it's really good.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
It's
I
just two
saw.
characters.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
two characters, and the story with just two characters, and maybe other two characters appear in just one song, but two characters the whole album, and it's just perfect. It's just a
Hmm.
story, a story that it's really good because it has like very emotional themes, and there's not a lot of action going on. It's like a journey to
Hmm.
get. It's a journey of two characters to get out of the underworld, and it's the things they go through, all the action kind of thing, the moving, the flying, the stuff like that. It goes linked to it goes hand to hand with very emotional themes all the time, and I think that's the beauty of that album.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
that's one
that's
of the things that inspire me to go more into the emotional themes of the story more than the action of it.
hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because as you mentioned earlier, it's a very unique format and a very unique challenge because you were saying that you have to do certain things in audio. You called it like a musical audio book. And you have
Mm.
to do things in a certain way or emphasize things like that meteor landing and stuff like that because, as you said, if it was a Broadway musical, it's different because you have this visual component to it. So you can storytell in a more of a multimedia kind of sense. Same with a film or whatever. But obviously in music, it's the music is by itself the art. So very specific format for that. And so as you say, you can't necessarily have that visual stimulation of, I don't know, like a battle scene in if you're watching Lord of the Rings or something.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that visual in the music. So you might be able to have a bit of that, but as you say, probably the best thing you can do is really focus in on those emotions and those feelings because that's what music does so
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
out of interest is like is musical theater and opera and stuff, is that a particular interest of yours? Are you into that?
I have to admit that I don't not like no not I'm not saying that, but I didn't get a lot into musical theater. I have
Mhm.
to admit that, and it's a thing that it's there, and sometimes I watch short videos on YouTube and stuff like that about musical theater, but it's not something that I'm very interested in. And opera, not that much either. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's not that it's not that I don't like. It's just I haven't seen a lot of it.
Mhm.
It's weird, because I'm very interested in doing like a metal opera and
Yeah.
like a conceptual music, and it could be taken into a theater and be
Mhm.
play out to the crowd, and like sort of like act a little bit, like stuff like that. But it's not something that I've been interested in. It's weird because everyone asks me the same question. It's like, oh, so you must like music theater and Broadway musicals and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna say not that much.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair, man. That's fair. It's interesting because you have the kind of classical side and then the whole rock metal opera
Hmm.
side. But yeah, I suppose that's fine. Like if it's Ayreon and the rock opera side that really brought you into that, and then also your classical background that gives you that sense of soundtrack composing, yeah, it makes sense. Whatever, tickles your fancy, really, however it works. But um, what because you obviously you had that background in it. Like, would you say that you're a fan of classical music then, I suppose, like orchestral music more? And what, if so, like what are your favorites? What's been most influential to you?
From classical music, I think it was not I don't think I've been that much into classical music because
Mm.
I've always like linked that music to the traditional
The
music
academic.
teaching. Yes,
Yeah.
and I don't like it a little bit, and I think it's a very elitist and classist, but that's a
Mm.
thing for another story. And so I haven't. I enjoy sometimes, the sporadic classical music, but
Mm.
classical piece, but not that much into it. Even though
Hmm.
I know there's the many composers, the many modern composers that I like drink
Hmm.
from that classical music. For example, John Williams is the clear example. He has a
Yeah.
lot of classical influence, even though he uses the orchestra in a more modern way.
Mm.
And then we have, for example, here in Spain, we have a composer that I really like is Oscar Navarro, which is a very famous composer here in Spain. And I think internationally, in some places, he has done many great pieces of music because he composes classical, not classical music. He composes orchestral music in the way I do. Like I have, for example, the Symphony of a Modern World or All
Hmm.
Colors of Nature, which are pure orchestral music, but I wouldn't call it classical music because it's
Yeah.
modern orchestral music. And
Hmm.
he does stuff like that. And I think I enjoy more modern composers than classic music.
Hmm.
And my favorites, well, of course, John Williams and Hans Zimmer. But
Hmm.
let's go a little bit less mainstream.
Hmm.
I really like Christopher Larkin, which is the
Right. Yeah.
composer for the video game Hollow Knight, which I
Hmm.
think it's I have watched a lot of videos analyzing that soundtrack, and it's amazing. It's amazing in composition wise. He's like, I'm gonna take this theme, I'm gonna twist it, and it's gonna be like it's gonna seem like this completely different theme, but actually it's not. And then I'm gonna use this kind of weird metric, but it's not a weird metric, it's just a normal 4/4 metric or something like that, stuff like that that I
Yeah.
really really like. This kind of nerdy things about music that I really enjoy. And I really love also what's her name? Stephanie Economou. I don't know
Okay.
if you know her. She's the one who made the soundtrack for the last for the previous Assassin's Creed game for Valhalla.
Right. Hmm.
And she won the Grammy for that soundtrack, I believe.
Wow.
And she also made the soundtrack of a Netflix series which were canceled before, which because it was not a very popular series. But I really enjoy her soundtrack, and she in her social media she talks a lot about her soundtrack, how she made it, and she's quite the opposite of Hans Zimmer. She has like a small amount of instrumentists and of singers, and she does all the soundtrack with just a few of them. And
Nice.
the series that I was talking about is Jupiter's Legacy, which
Right.
has an amazing soundtrack all the way, and she mixes, like kind of electric guitars and like this kind of
Nice.
um metal sound with the synthesizers, and then with like orchestral singers, like opera singers,
Amazing.
I believe there is a piece that I really enjoy, which is synthesizers and eight opera singers.
Hmm.
Just
Wow.
that, and it's amazing. And I think those are my some of my favorite composers. And Gareth Cocker, I think I don't know if you know him. he made soundtracks for many video games, and well, he's amazing. I know for a fact that whenever he makes a soundtrack for a video game, the video game is the soundtrack, not the video game.
Yeah, man. Oh, I'm with you. I just think what's so cool, especially cool about soundtracks in sci-fi, fantasy, things like that. This example that you gave about like 8 opera singers and synthesizers, it's so peculiar. Like, what other music do you like? No one releases a song like that, right?
Yeah.
But in soundtrack, it's like you to create the sound of like an alien world or something. That is such a amazing process. It's and just like you, that excites me to hear something like that. Something like this is the sound of some alien civilization or whatever. Like that's just so cool to do in music.
Yeah, yeah. I've recently watched a short series of a short animated series in Disney Plus, which is about Star Wars, the Star Wars universe. And there
Right.
are
Wow,
three
cool.
chapters, three
Yeah.
chapters about well, I don't know if you know a little bit of Star Wars or if you're into
Sure.
the
Yeah, 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 definitely.
in okay, so they are the like sort of like the background story of Count Dooku.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And it's about his fall into the dark side. And there are three chapters about him, and the last chapter has like this very ominous. It's a very slow chapter. It's a very short chapter, like 15 minutes or something like that. It's a very slow paced kind of sequence all the time, almost all the time, and it has like this kind of like Blade Runner vibe to the soundtrack, which creates like
Very
an
cool.
atmosphere of like an ominous atmosphere of something bad, something really bad is going on.
Yeah.
And then it mixes it with the classical Star Wars themes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just very, very, very intense.
Amazing.
And I was going to talk about something else, and I forgot about it. But anyway,
You'll pick it up, I'm sure. But that man, yeah, Star Wars is such a good example, I think, because I would say that, debatably, I've said this a few times, the music from Star Wars, the original like suite of music from the original movies, especially, or really overall the movies, is, arguably like the greatest suite of music of all time. Certainly up there of one of them. Just like such a
yeah.
masterpiece in that kind of thematic, especially in terms of thematic world building, and it's iconic. We can all sing like so many tunes from Star Wars, and again, it makes you think of these characters in these worlds. It's so phenomenal, and that is one thing I actually really love about the kind of Disney expansion of Star Wars. Um, is that yeah, you now have many composers who are Star Wars
Hmm.
soundtrack composers, and they're all kind of harking back to the god John Williams,
Yeah,
who
of course.
created this style, but they all obviously get to do their own things with it and modernize it and do all these things, but they're often always harking back to those original themes, which is just like the greatest archive of themes ever. But they're also just, making new themes and stuff that kind of
Hmm.
invokes that style, almost this unique genre that John Williams created, and modernizing it, and yeah, doing it in this way. And so for you to give that example, that sounds fascinating. I haven't seen this particular series. It must be a new one.
I
Yeah, I
recommend
love
them.
that. Yeah, yeah. Is it
Mhm.
like an animation, I assume?
Yeah, it's called Tales of the Jedi, and it's
Mm,
just six chapters, six very short chapters about two characters, Ahsoka and Count Dooku.
Count Dooku, right?
Very
Yeah.
good, very good. I enjoy them. I was like because I rewatched the whole the Clone Wars series,
Oh wow, that's a
and I
lot,
was like
right?
I still want more Star Wars, and I found that, and I was like, okay, more.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Okay, I
And
mean,
yeah, it's yeah.
no,
Go on.
I was just about to go just nerd out and say like it am I right in thinking that Count Dooku was like the master of Qui-Gon Jinn? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It actually
Thought so.
appears. It actually goes through stories about the master and apprentice, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
quite interesting to see that. And And about music, which the thing you said before that John Williams is this kind of overpowering figure over everything that is done about Star Wars, and
Yeah,
then the other composers having to, you know, to like. I was playing the video game, you know, the Jedi Survivor, the last one that
yeah.
came
I'm
out of Star
just
Wars.
listening to that soundtrack. Yeah, man.
And I was watching I was watching a short video of the composer talking about how he made the soundtrack,
Yeah,
and he was talking about, you know, having to not to recycle but to the need to have some of the themes, some of the original themes, and how to work with them through a video game and through his own compositions, his own themes for the new characters and new stories that the video game is telling. And I always, when they talk about this, I always think about, you know, for example, the more far away Star Wars story that I can think about, which is The Mandalorian,
mm,
and how that soundtrack is quite different
yeah.
from the rest of the, you know, it's like more like a cowboy movie, like an old cowboy movie, you
Yes,
know,
more
has this
Western.
kind of
Yeah,
feeling, the kind of Western, yeah, film. And it's funny because there are moments in which some Jedi appear and some kind of stuff like that with the Force and stuff appear, because that's inevitable when you do something about Star Wars. It's inevitable. And he has to go back to the originals,
yeah,
to the
yeah,
original themes. He even though he has, the composer has go so far away from the original themes and created his own sound to that
yeah,
new to that expanded content of Star Wars. He has to go back. There's the
yeah.
moments where you have to go back and you have to adapt those themes to your sound, which I think
Totally.
it's quite hard, especially when they are not your own
Uh-huh.
sound.
Yes, but especially something as iconic as Star Wars, it's almost like it's just a part of like all of us in a way. It's its own kind of mythos. So I think he did a great job with that. His name has just escaped me, but the Swedish guy that did
Yeah.
Mandalorian, I think he did a fantastic job with, as you say, like really making it his own and establishing his own thing while still invoking the
Yeah.
magic of Star Wars music, you know. Um, yeah, oh man, it's fantastic, and I love all that stuff just like you do, man. It's so fun to nerd out about that. I was curious though, just to um get a bit more of an overview. Like, what kind of things are you interested in outside of music?
Well, of course, writing, as I said before,
Of course, yeah,
I liked a good storytelling, and I would love to create a piece of writing that people really get into and be trapped by it,
nice.
and to be able to transmit the idea of this whole universe that I have created just for a musical project. Which this is
Yeah,
the thing, I created this musical project and I was like, but I have like a whole world building made, like a
yeah,
very, very full complex world building made about it. And now I have to express, and I have to show it somehow. And I
yeah.
think writing is one of the best things that I can do, that I and well, I of course I love everything about storytelling. I love watching movies, I love watching series and reading books. And beyond that, I don't know other things that I really enjoy. Well, sometimes I have these bursts of energy in which I start to draw or to take pictures and
Nice.
edit pictures and do some image editing. That's one of the other things that I do for my own projects and my own music.
Mhm.
I always do my own cover arts, and but those are just spontaneous bursts of creativity that don't happen very often.
Yeah, but it is all overall. It's just about creativity, though, for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and creativity and all that has to do with the storytelling. For example, video games.
Mm.
I really enjoy video games that have a story.
Yeah.
Either a story that you can choose or you can go through. For example, now I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, which is
Hmm.
like the pinnacle of storytelling, of role playing and choosing your own story and how you want
Yeah.
to play, because you want to play however you want. And I also sometimes I also like to have a story told, also a story told for me. Sometimes video games that just have a pre-designed path, but
Yeah.
it's like an interactive story, and I
Hmm.
really enjoy that too. I
Hmm.
really enjoy storytelling, and I like to be surprised. Like, oh, or I like to. I really enjoy when they create a universe, or
Hmm.
characters and stuff like that, and they just they show it to me bit by bit. Or sometimes, I don't know if it happened to you sometimes, but when you watch a series or a book that has its own lore, its own story and
Hmm.
stuff like that, and you're a little bit lost at the beginning, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know what is going on. I don't know what is going on. For example, when I've read the Stormlight Archive
Hmm.
from Brandon Sanderson, and I was lost at the beginning because it has like three prologues, the first book, and I was like, what is going on? I mean, it's cool, but what is going on? And the more
Yeah.
you get into the story, the more you start to understand, until you understand to a point where you can make your own deductions about what is going on. And
Yeah.
that's the,
Yeah.
the that's the interesting part of a storytelling, being able to
Totally.
get the reader, or the people that watches the series or whatever, or the player if it's a video game, and to get them inside the story
Yes.
and inside the world you create, and be able to sometimes even play with them, like
Yes.
with the plot twist and stuff like that. So they are so into the story that they don't realize that the things that are going on, even though the proofs and the evidences of what's going on, it's out there. He is like
Hmm.
one character more. He's not the reader. He's one character that is participating in what is going on. So he is
Mm.
surprised the same way as a character is surprised, and things like that. It's just really cool.
I love how you've described that. Yeah, that's so cool, man. And I think that that's why certain things like Star Wars or Game of Thrones or something like that it was just like so popular because it can capture the imagination in that way. As you say, you feel not like you just know the story of Star Wars or whatever, but you feel like you know what it's like to live on Naboo or Tatooine or
Yeah.
something, and you feel like you're a person that lives there. Yeah, I mean that's so cool, man. I love how you describe that. Um, but with everything that we've talked about, and obviously, you've harked onto like things you're working on with Golden World Archive and things like that. What is next on the horizon for you and in terms of what you're working on?
Well, of course, we're going to release a third single from Golden War Archive.
Hmm.
And I am currently working on this like science fiction metal project of my own, and which I released the first song, which is Faking, the song that I released on November, I believe. And
Hmm.
I have two more songs finished and ready to be published,
Nice.
one by one, step by step, single by single. But I think people are gonna like, no matter which metal style you want, because I wanted not to be stuck in just one style, in just, for example, just symphonic metal. I wanted to explore. I wanted to do things. So, for example, I have one song that is more like modern metal, has a more modern metal feel into that, and the other one is like quite progressive, and I have another one which is pure symphonic metal. And for example, the the last one that I published, Faking, is a little bit more like, yes, it's symphonic metal, but it kind of has a more like a neoclassical sound to it, like neo-symphonic sound to it, because it
Mhm.
was a song that it was a little bit inspired by Blind Hex, which is a new Mexican symphonic metal band, which I really like, and it was kind of inspired by them, and I really really enjoy it. So I want to explore a little bit with this kind of science fiction project. Explore, you know, modern metal, industrial metal, symphonic metal, progressive metal. Maybe I'll do a little bit of doom metal. I don't know.
Nice.
I'm gonna do whatever I feel like doing, and like
Great.
that's the idea.
Oh man, fantastic. I'm so excited for it, man. Like I love that you get to just, dip your paintbrush in all the kind of different parts of the palette that you want, man. And yeah, I really enjoy everything that you come up with. It's always distinctly yours, but has a lot of variety to it. And, especially love the storytelling and everything that you're doing and everything that we've discussed here, man. I'm conscious of the fact we've been going for a very long time. I've been taking a lot of your time today, man, and I appreciate it so much. Like it's so much fun chatting with you. So I suppose now is as good a time as any to wrap it up. Before we do, is there anything that you'd like to get in there in particular?
Not really. I would love to know a little bit about your way of approaching the project and the collaborations that you are also making right now with with the project you have going on.
Yeah,
How
well, yeah, that's yeah, interesting question. I mean, I I I relate to you in many ways, especially what you're saying about trying to embrace these collaborative components. I relate to you in many ways. I'm very passionate about music and storytelling, especially these two things combined. I love soundtracks and thematic world building
hmm,
and all of that kind of stuff as much as I love rock and metal music and all sorts of things there. So um, I like to think that we have a similar approach. The thing that I'm looking to do is create this expansive universe, as you say.
hmm,
And one thing that I really like to do is get people to play characters like in Ayreon or whatever, but like as you kind of say, be more have more agency in creating those characters, kind of like an RPG, because of that thing you're saying about being
yeah.
inside the world and kind of creating your own adventure type thing. So what I really want to do is kind of create the world and the system for people to be a part of it, but really you kind of get to create your own character and carve your own path within it. And I'm really looking to just kind of accommodate that. But it's the thing that's unique and challenging about it is that I very much see it as kind of a community project, so it's really
Hmm,
more about setting it up in a way that lots of people can work on lots of things together and it can kind of all be tied in under this one thing. But instead of seeing it as one particular project, I kind of see it more as many branches of projects that can
hmm.
kind of be linked together. I suppose that's the approach that I have with it. But yeah, I suppose that's that.
Yeah,
But
because it was quite surprising to see that you, for example, it is the same project, but then you have like in Spotify you have like different
yeah, different like
artist
bands
names.
basically. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it was like quite interesting to see that. It's like, oh, so it is a single project, but it's at the same time like different, as you say, branches of projects all
yeah.
around there, which it's kind of interesting and not quite easy to see this kind of thing
Yes, yeah,
and
and I
easy
mean
to do.
it's definitely it's a unique challenge that I've been working on a long time to work out the best way to present that, and we're starting to progress on that, and I kind of held back on releasing stuff from it for a little while, but this year we're going to be doing a lot more of that. But the one thing for sure is that I'm going to open it up more to include sort of other people's projects type thing. So like the song
Mm,
credits can kind of focus more on, you know, if it's a collaboration with a band or artists that have their own projects, then those kind of things can be linked in terms of like authorship. But yeah, the idea is very much that, you know, it all started from Flavor Nurse, that was my band that I actually played live with for years,
mm,
and we came up with these characters and concepts and stories. But the whole idea was like that we could form some other band with its own identity and its own musical style,
mm,
that would be completely different. You know, maybe one is a, you know, melodic rock project and one's death metal, you know, so they're not the same band, but like they're all from characters that are all from the same universe. That's where it
mm.
really came from. And it kind of came from, again, this same sort of ethos that you have, that I could never settle, man. I wanted to make like a rock band that has this kind of style and a death metal
Yeah.
band that has this style and everything else, you know? And I just always loved this idea of character, like musician characters, you know, like kind of like many rock stars, you know, with these larger than life personas, you know, to be able
Mm.
to create a lot of fictional characters that are the musicians. Because I think that's what's different in a lot of rock operas or whatever. It's about characters in a story, right? Which is
See,
great
yeah.
too. But I kind of like this idea of, if you had characters like David Bowie playing Ziggy Stardust, or I don't know, the members of Kiss or something like that. If you kind of play these characters of the persona, imagine if all these fictional characters were a part of this world. I guess that's the kind of premise for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting way of doing things, and it's the approach that I have for my next solo album is I want people to be, you know, to be listening to some songs, and of course there's going to be a majority of symphonic metal because that's what I
Mhm.
know the best to do, but it's gonna have other songs mixed together, and they're gonna be like, oh, this is completely different from what I've heard before. And the
Mhm.
singles, I think the singles I'm gonna release before the album are gonna be like an image of this, and they're gonna be expecting to listen to another symphonic metal song, and it's not going to be a symphonic metal song. So I think that the
Nice.
idea of this project is also to surprise people with
Mhm.
the changes and with experimentation, and you know, it's I don't know, I think it's
I
gonna
love
be
that.
great.
Yeah, I'm sure of it, man. I have no shadow of a doubt. And do you have a kind of time frame in mind for that? I know these things can be changeable, but
Not exactly, because I'm working with another person in the not in the collaboration, but in the more like merchandise, in the more like marketing perspective, and the more in the promotion and stuff like that. I'm working with another person, so I'm just kind of we're just kind of, yeah, not like listening to the song, having the production built together quite well, because I'm gonna do like all the creativity and all the production, and I want it to be right to the start the campaign, you know, and
Mhm.
to create the campaign and program it and stuff like that. So I can say maybe before this summer, and maybe even in spring, this spring, I think. Yeah,
Cool.
probably,
Amazing, man. Well, I
most
can't
likely.
wait. I can't wait for that, man. I really loved Faking. The last single that you brought out, I thought that that was a really cool, you know, defining this particular sound, man. And obviously it's gonna have a lot of variation to it, man. So I'm really looking forward to that, man. And yeah, hopefully we can do something like this again sometime, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Cool, man. Well,
So,
cheers. Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for taking the time, and yeah, cheers.
thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I don't know how many time we've been talking.
Yeah,
Oh my
quite.
God, two
It's a long
hours.
one. Yeah, my
Yeah,
best part
it
of
went
yeah.
it went like that. It went
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
fast. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you finally, and I really enjoy this kind of things you do with, you know, talking with other musicians and with other people from different, you know, singers and musicians and composers, and it's great. It's great to see and to hear different perspectives of same things, or hearing them about experiences, for example, from the perspective of a singer, the experience of working with a composer or with another project and stuff like that is quite interesting to see.
Oh man, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and glad to have your perspectives on things added to the mix, man. So thank you so much, man, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you again. Bye. See you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. Special thanks to William Caine for joining me. I really enjoyed this. Be sure to check out Will's work at williamcaine.com. Links will be in the show. That's all for this one. I'll see you next time.